Adriana Formby-Fernandez from the NOAA, partnership program, I think is our preferred framing now. Is that right, Adriana? Or are we still calling it the IPG?
We are transitioning to the Industry Partnership Program. You're right.
Industry Partnership Program. Excellent. So this is the first of two sets of presentations that Adriana is going to be giving us that talk about, I guess I think of it as a lot of what was accomplished and what products were actually put in place as part of the industry proving ground activity that we've all been following for a couple of years. This one is going to focus on climate at a glance, which I've been using for a long time. It's great. The storm events database and the sea level calculator. Then there'll be another session in 2 months at the next task force meeting covering three other products that came out of IPG. So, Adriana, I probably didn't do you the justice you deserve in terms of an introduction. So I'm just going to turn it over to you. Feel free to frame it any way you want. And I think you have 45 minutes.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to try to pull up the slides while I also give my introduction, so bear with me if it sounds a little strange. But yes, I am Adriana Formby-Fernandez. I am the Architecture and Engineering Sector User Engagement Lead. It was formerly Morgan Stahl. I have followed in her footsteps. Um, I apparently cannot find my tab and talk at the same time. There we go. And let me start that. There we go. All right. So yeah, for those of you who have seen our work,
Adriana,
yes.
I promise this is my last interruption. But I think, as we think about these other workshops that we talked about at the beginning of the hour, think about the products that are coming out now, how they fit in, and then like what would be the delta for products going forward. So that's kind of my charge to the audience, if you will. And now I'll let you have it back.
I just want to make sure you all can see the slideshow. I cannot see it. Okay, great. So yeah, so this is as Dan was saying, we're going to be showing some of the products that have been developed out of the industry proving grounds, but we also want this Lunch and Learn series to be kind of a training session to introduce organizations which are part of the A&E sector that may not be familiar with NOAA or NCEI as well as this group here. And so this is a preview of what that lunch and learn is going to look like or may look like. And I just wanted to stress as well that this can be tailored to your organization and to your use case and to whatever applications you want us to kind of go on and on about. So we can tailor it to any different climate and weather variables that you use in your daily workflow. We can adjust the level of familiarity. So if it's being presented to someone or an organization like this, where you guys are very familiar with NOAA products, we can get more into the technical details versus if it's to a group that's entirely new to NOAA, then we would kind of pivot a little bit. And so again, this is a preview. The script will be a little different if we take this to your organization, but we wanted to give you all kind of a glimpse of what it could be like, and then to encourage you to reach out to us, either to myself or to Rusbos or Allison, or ask Dan and he'll pass it along to us if you guys are interested in having us come and do this lunch and learn. And with that, I will get started. So this is what the agenda would typically look like. So we would stress a little bit about the industry initiative, again, the connection between A&E and NOAA data, and then dive into the tools. So this slide might be a little repetitive if you've been in the ASC NOAA task force before, but this is just to stress again this industry partnership and the engagement that we do with the industry, as well as with the retail industry and the insurance and reinsurance industries, where we're really trying to collaborate to develop, improve, and share our weather and climate information and make them into tools and products that are more usable and more useful for the people that are making the decisions, so that we can empower that rapid decision making, the long term planning, and just overall help with the US economy. And then we wanted to stress as well the reliance and the cooperation between A&E and NOAA data. I'm sure you guys have all heard of this report that had said that every dollar invested in resilience can lead to $13 in savings in the long term. And this is being done through the standards and implementing NOAA data within those standards for rain load design, stormwater management, floodplain management, and more. through emergency response and recovery, and then through post-disaster analysis. And so I'm not going to spend too long on this slide. I'm sure you're all familiar with this and aware of this, but this is one of the examples where we can tailor this kind of connection and making that bridge between the industry and NOAA more clear for your organization. And then this slide, as I mentioned, this is a preview. So at the start of our presentations, we want to kind of gauge the knowledge base of the organization that we're presenting to. And so we've been using a format in a software called Menti that has these really fun graphics where it's like a poll, you use it on your phone, and then it'll show what the stats are for each one of the questions. And so this just kind of lets us know how familiar the audience is with weather and climate data, if they're integrating it into their work, and then how comfortable they are integrating it in. And then we'll dive into the actual tools. So this one, I will ask for a little bit of patience. I usually have someone helping me to put the links in the chat at the same time, and I'm going to have to switch between a couple screens. So we'll go ahead and start. But yeah, the first one is Climate at a Glance. This is an existing temperature resource that has been around for a while, and it really targets precipitation and temperature. This contains maps, time series ranking, and Haywood plots, which are my favorite, again, for that monthly temperature and precipitation information. So I will drop the link in the chat and then head over to that tool. And then switch my screen over as well. All right. Do you all see a climate at a glance with a bunch of the red banners at the top? Yes. Okay, great. I'm going to try to move it over a little bit. So ignore the red banners. We're having some maintenance. But this is what the main page looks like. And where I want to start today is just with the regional mapping to kind of ease us into what this tool has. So it splits it into national, regional, state, division, county, and city scales. And I know those scales are still a little large for most engineering applications, but we want this to be a tool that's used to kind of get a sense of the region that you're looking at down to the city level, but mainly to just kind of understand what that area might be facing in terms of climate and weather. So I will scroll down here, and I'm from Florida, so I always use Florida and the Southeast as my kind of demo areas. But here we can look at the average temperature. So I'll scroll up a little bit more. We'll look at, as I mentioned, you can look at agricultural belts, miscellaneous regions, river basins, all of those. I'll just leave it as climate regions for now. We'll look at average temperature, and yeah, we'll look at April. But the timescales do range monthly from 1 month all the way to 60 months, which is, I find, pretty impressive. So I'll go ahead and click on the Southeast. We'll scroll down again, and now you can see a plot, or time series plot, of what the average temperature for all of the Aprils has been from 1895 through present. And this data is available as a CSV, JSON, or XML. But you can also just take, a screenshot of this and use that to very clearly show it is getting warmer. That's not something that's necessarily revolutionary at this point, but it could be useful to put in reports or anything like that. And then there is also a data table for added accessibility. So this is really great, cool, but as I mentioned before, I know that most people are looking at much smaller scales. And so I want to hop over to the city mapping. So we'll hop over here. Again, we see this map for the entire US, and they do only pick a few cities. Obviously, this is not all of the cities. It is major cities, and I believe it is based off of the GHCNH, the Global Historical Climate Network stations. But I will verify that if anyone's curious. But one thing to know right off the bat, right, is that the average temperature for April in 2026 was very warm down in the southern states and colder up in the northern states. And then if you want to hover over and get exact temperatures, the averages, and the departures from the means, and also the rank of where that city was in relation to the other cities, then you can hover over with your mouse, and then it'll give you that information in that bar right below. There are also text labels for this, but it's a little much. Um, and then there's also a table again for accessibility. So what I want to look at now is the precipitation. And so again, we can do this for the entire US or we can pick a specific city. So I'm just going to go down to Florida. And then I want us to look at the 60 month, just because I think that's also pretty fun. So we'll go ahead and plot this. And so now you can see kind of zoomed in on precipitation for Florida. Again, you can hover over a city, but now it'll show you the accumulative precipitation from the last 60 months. So from May 2021 to April 2026. And you can see the slight variations from one city to the next. But this is kind of, again, a quick look to kind of get a sense of where or what the climate and weather kind of norms are for a certain area. And then you can also see, again, the averages, departure, percent of average. And so now I'll turn over to the Haywood plot, which I mentioned before. This is my favorite plot, just because I feel like this is very unique to this tool. I'll leave it here on Daytona Beach, again for Florida, and now we're looking at January to December for precipitation. And what this plot does is it creates a line graph of all of the data from all of the historical record, essentially. So I think this goes back to 1895, and then it ranks the top 10. And so, or it ranks 10 of the data sets, sorry. So we are looking at the period of record average, which is the black line here in the middle, the 5 wettest years, the 5 driest years, and then the current year, which is this kind of blue down at the bottom. But I find this really helpful for engineering applications in terms of getting that range and that kind of scale of how wet could we expect it to be, how dry could we expect it to be when you're looking at temperature, how hot has it been on record, how cool has it been, what are the kind of that range of values for temperature or precipitation. And we find this could be helpful for figuring out stormwater management, for just a general awareness of what you could expect in that area. And then that could also help with emergency planning, so on and so forth. So yeah, so that's just kind of a quick introduction to climate at a glance. And then obviously this could be tailored to whatever region or organization is interested in. And yeah, so I will flip back over with my slides. Will I actually? I will not. Just to make it a little easier on the screen sharing aspect, I will not switch over my slides. I will start just sharing the next tool that I have to talk about today. And this tool is being revitalized by the Industry Proving Grounds or the Industry Partnership. And this is the, give me one second. This is the Storm Events Database tool. This tool is a kind of fan favorite for a lot of people who are familiar with the NWS storm data records. And so what we've done is we have revitalized the interface. We've kind of brought it into the modern day. And then we're also doing a very rigorous QA check to ensure that all of the data that's being offered is accurate and reliable. And then we're also offering a PDF certification so that this could be taken for legal uses, for use for insurance claims, anything that needs that like stamp of approval on it. So this is the storm events database. I'm hoping that I'm showing the right thing. Seeing thumbs up. Okay, great. So I will scroll down to the search page. So this is the new homepage. As I mentioned, there's the PDF certification. We also do bulk data downloads, so if that's of interest. But essentially what this is a collection of reports that have been collected by NWS primarily after a significant event. So there's 55 events to pick from within our catalog. And this ranges from tornadoes to hurricanes to snow, drought, fires, fog, hail. There's so many different types of events. And what's kind of cool is that a lot of the reports that have come in the last 10 to 15 years have come from people who have posted, the size of a hailstone that fell, or if they've reported something from their insurance company, then that gets put into here. And so a lot of it is people-led or citizen science, which I always find kind of fun. Um, but this tool is very helpful, as I mentioned, for the legal aspect, if you're trying to justify something, but also for kind of retrospective analysis. So if there was a major flood event, then you'd be able to use this tool to augment your report or your portfolio for why a certain, roadway or something culvert that failed, then you could try to make the link between that big event and what has happened with the infrastructure. So this is the new search by map. Again, I'm going to zoom into Florida. So I'll just drag this down. But one of the cool new features that we've integrated in is that you can draw a polygon around the counties that you'd like to look at. And so this makes it a little easier if there was a big hurricane that hit the panhandle. And so I'll just draw right around the panhandle, kind of into Georgia, and then every county that is touched by the little polygon that I've drawn will be listed. And if I want to refine that even more, then I can deselect some of the counties. But we're trying to make this really easy for people to locate the areas that were affected and maybe even other areas that were tangentially affected by a certain storm. And so then I will scroll down. These are all the event types. As I mentioned, there's 55 of them, so I'm not going to go through all of them. But you can see that there's quite a lot. And there's a lot too that you wouldn't think of, or at least I wouldn't think of. So obviously a lot of marine ones, but also rip currents, sneaker waves, volcanic ash is one, tsunamis, winter weather. So it really spreads the range of any type of event that could happen or has happened. And then for some of the events, flood, hail, tornado, and wind, then you can refine it even more. You can filter for size of hail. You can filter for the EF of the tornado, the cause of the flood, all of that. And then we'll go ahead and just pick a start and end date. Because this is in development right now, as I mentioned, we're still QAing. We do only have data up until January, but normally this would be updated up to 3 months back. So right now we're in May, so it would have data in there from January and February, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to go back to, we'll just do from 2020, January 1st, and then through January 31st, 2026, and then we'll go ahead and just search. And hopefully this won't take too long. There we go. So right off the bat, we try to show you the number of events that have been reported, and then kind of the quick stats from all of the results. And so we see there was 146 zones that were affected. There were 19 different types of events. We have estimated property damage and prop damage that gets brought in from the NWS reports. We also have the number of fatalities and injuries. And so as you refine your search, then obviously these numbers will change, but that kind of gives you a quick look into what has happened in that region. And then the results table, let's go down a little more. You can download this table as is, or you can just go down and then pick a certain event. So I will just scroll down and pick one at random. Looks like we have, actually, I'm going to pick this one in Melbourne. So fun fact, Melbourne Beach is about an hour and a half south of Daytona Beach. Beautiful beaches, my favorite beach. So little plug there if you're looking for a vacation trip. And then I think I'm going to have to reshare my screen because I switched screens. That is the one thing with Zoom. I have not figured out yet how to get it to follow my screen switching. But this is the event details page. So an event is usually one event that's limited to one county, and then an episode represents the larger storm system. So for example, like a hurricane would have an entire episode because the events would go from each county that was affected. And so if we look at this marine thunderstorm wind event that happened in January of 2020, we can see that this one was kind of a little more calm, I'd say, than some of the other events. There were no injuries, no recorded property damage. But the biggest thing that I wanted to highlight is that we do show an event map, and everything has a little icon so you can see it in relation to where other things, um, other geographic points are located. And then if you go down, we have an event narrative, which is an explanation of what the event was, and then an episode narrative. And this kind of relates all of those events to that one episode. And then you can download all of this again as a PDF and get that certified to be able to take that and have a authoritative source that says, the peak wind gust was 36 knots and my roof flew off of my shed, and so now I need to have insurance help me pay for it because this exceeded the limitations or something like that. And so we see this being used a lot by insurance companies, but in a field related to architecture and engineering, such as forensics or like structural forensics, this could be really useful to make the case for why certain clips need to be installed or why a certain framing technique would or wouldn't work. So that's what we anticipate this being used for by this industry. And so we just wanted to share that. And then the last tool for today is the sea level rise calculator. And this one, I will switch screens one more time. This tool has also been revamped recently. This was not out of the industry partnership program, but I am super excited about this tool. I think it's very well laid out and it's just super informative and very cool. But this has been done by our colleagues over at the coast part of NOAA. And so if there's any questions on this one later on, we can take those questions over to them. But essentially, this takes the sea level rise data and it has been formatted into a very cool tool with a bunch of different plots and explanations and graphs. And the way that it works is geographic. So I'm going to zoom in here again to Florida. And so each one of these blue dots represents a different area that you could look at for sea level rise. And so now I'll come over to the Gulf side. I feel like I've spent a lot of time on the Atlantic side recently, or in this presentation. And so we'll go ahead and just look at Clearwater Beach. And so right off the bat, you can see that the different bubbles indicate, again, these different locations, but then the quick views represents the number of tools that are integrated within each location. And so if I click on Clearwater Beach, there are 5 quick views, and the period of record is also shown, so from 1973 to present. And so if this is something that is needed for you to, if you need to go back to the 60s or something like that, then you can see the period of record right off the bat. So I'll open this up, and this is what these quick views are. And so they separate the tools into these different cards. The first one is future sea levels. Second one is changes in flood frequency, extreme water levels, observed sea level trends, and then seasonal variation. And each one of these cards has a video that explains what this is. And then there's also this little help tool at the top, and it gives you more information on what that quick view has. So this one is very, very informative. They have super great tutorial videos, trainings, the whole kit and caboodle, as they say. And so I'm going to focus in on the changes in flood frequency quick view today. And this one lets you explore how often flooding has occurred in your area, but then also how it might change in the future. And I know that that's something that is of great interest to this industry, is what the future might hold, but still being able to compare that to what has already happened. So this is the first, and actually I'm going to kind of zoom out so we can see a little more. Okay. So this first graph here is the annual flood days. And so it shows, as you scroll across, the annual days above the threshold, what that threshold is. And then there's also an explanation right down here that explains what the graph is showing, but then also what that means in relation to what might be happening. And then if I scroll down some more, we can see the water levels map. And I know this is a map that was integrated into the coastal sea level rise tool, where it has the different color designations of how high the water level may be. And so this is also shown in this tool. We can see the average historic flooding days, so how many days it flooded per year on average. And this does go back so to 1973 as the period of record said, but for others states, zones, cities. This could go all the way back to 1920. And this kind of just gives you a gauge of, is the flooding getting worse? Looks like it is. But then you do see this little blip between 2000 and 2009. So maybe that could be an area to research more or to just determine what might be changing. There is also this projected high tide flooding days. And so this is they break it down into these different scenarios. And then they are projecting how many high tide flooding days will occur at these different years. And then the likely high tide flooding from 2030 to 2050. And so this could be used, again, to figure out if the area that you're designing in may be more susceptible to high tide flooding, how susceptible it may be, and can be used to inform decision making on that aspect. And then there's different settings you can control. There's different menu options, but all of this is used to kind of help give you the information that you need in a way that makes sense, in a way that has explanations for things. And then, as I mentioned, there's also other quick views available. They have a really comprehensive FAQ section, and they're very responsive as well. So if there's any other additional questions you have, then it's just an easier to use interface versus the data itself. All right, so I will now flip back over to my slide deck. This is the last screen change for today. And let me, okay. There we go. And I will share all the links, sorry, at the end. I realized I did not share links for some of the tools. So I will share that at the end. But yeah, so we have our different slide decks. Those are just 3 of the tools that we've chosen for today, as we wanted to keep this a little shorter. But we can also curate this Lunch and Learn series to, again, any weather or climate variables that are of interest, any use cases. We usually hold like a meeting beforehand to figure out what tools to show and then how deep to go into each one of the tools. And then as part of the Lunch and Learn series, one of the other components that we really stress is having a really rigorous Q&A discussion, and a really engaging one. That way we can listen to what the industry is saying and use that to either inform product development or just to make tweaks and also to be able to explain NOAA's tools a little bit better. The goal of these is to make sure that the users from that organization and from the industry on like a broad scale are more familiar with NOAA, more familiar with NCEI tools, and are able to kind of connect the pieces between there's all this weather happening, there's all these changes happening, how does that relate to my work? And so the way that we do this, again, is partly based off of Menti. So we have kind of some fun, interactive questions like which tool excited you the most? And then how comfortable are you with the tools and integrating it into your work? How likely are you to use this data now in your work? But then we also do a guided question and answer section, and then we just listen to what questions they have. And so that is the end. I wanted to thank you all for your time today, and I wanted to leave some time to hear about whether you think this would be helpful for your organization, or if you think a training the trainer type of session would be more helpful, where we are able to provide you all with the tools, the scripts, the materials that are needed for you to then take these tools to your organization and kind of just share the awareness of NOAA.
All right. Thank you, Adriana. I'm very pleased that we're presenting this. And again, as I mentioned, we'll be covering 3 more tools on the next session. Basically, just kind of to frame why we wanted to have Adriana present this to the task force is, as she has made clear, I think NOAA's very interested in finding audiences that want to drill down farther into this. ASCE obviously is a key partner in the architecture and engineering sector for IPG and NOAA in general. And so, what I promised Allison and Adriana is that, I would ask you all to think about what other communities of practice within your institutes or within your ASCE constituent committee might be interested in any particular tool or any particular application. I just wanted to reinforce that. Does anybody have any questions about any of the content? Just go ahead and raise your hand. Kelso, go ahead.
Adriana, this is really cool. I don't have a question, but I'm thinking here with my educator hat, and these tools evolve a lot, and I personally haven't seen the last version, so I appreciate it. I'm thinking that using the classroom for workforce training and for the next generation of engineers, so making sure we expand this to everybody at the universities to know of the new tools and the new widgets and stuff. And sometimes we think we know, but then the time goes by and you guys come up with a cool project that we don't even realize. So I think that's really neat. So I'm just saying that there might be another opportunity to make sure that the professors out there are also aware of the latest and greatest that you guys have.
Yeah, we're heavily relying on word of mouth right now. So if you're your colleagues or if you want to share this with your colleagues, we're happy to do a presentation. And we are working on, Ellen, I'm glad you said something about a webinar. We're working on getting this recorded and hosted on the our impacts page, which I'll share that link in a second as well. And then working to get it on YouTube. It's a little bit of a harder process, but that way it could be shared with the next generation of minds. Yeah, thank you.
Craig Musselman.
I noticed that you had projections for sea level rise, some content on that. Is there a plan to modify this when an NOAA temperature tool and Atlas 15 Volume 2 are available to add within this format projections of temperature and precipitation?
Within the format of the sea level calculator tool?
No, the other tools.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I was waiting to see how long it would take before an Atlas 15 question came our way. There are plans to disseminate that information once it is fully available. I can anticipate there being some trainings involved, either like this, where it's like a webinar kind of situation, or maybe in like a more static PDF user guide, training materials kind of way. But yeah, we anticipate having some training materials for those tools that really walks through what the new interface is going to look like and all of that.
Okay, thank you.
Other comments or questions for Adriana?
I see one in the chat from Norma. Yes, we actually, so Allison Crimmins, who some of you may know, Maggie Coates, and myself, we're at the National Adaptation Forum today and this week, and we have a tools cafe tomorrow on the storm events database, the typical meteorological year, and the US Precipitation Time Series Explorer. So yeah, we do come out to conferences. I love being able to talk to end users directly and have them play with the tools and then just kind of walk through that whole process with them. So yeah, we're always happy to attend conferences and share our tools.
Thank you. All right. Well, then I guess, Adriana, thank you so much. Bilal.
Thank you all.
I just want to thank you. It's so informative. And I was wondering, is there a way to get you to the ASC 2027? I mean, maybe it's beyond the cutoff date of having presentations formally, but there will be exhibit space and there will be maybe other opportunities. Just an idea. That will be a major gathering. I think it's in March 2027. There will be a lot of interest.
Yeah, I will talk to Allison about that.
Okay.
The contract that I'm on ends in September, and I'm not really sure what's happening next. I would love to go. But we will be sure to try our best to have someone attend that conference and share all of the work that we've done.
Oh,
And
that's
then
wonderful.
Aparna, I do see your question. I'll respond in the chat. But yeah, thank you everybody.
Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, I see Ellen responded there. I'll mention it too, since I've reviewed the abstracts. Hopefully, I know Allison submitted an abstract to talk about this work at ASCE 2027. gave it 2 thumbs up, but the program hasn't been finalized yet. So, but hopefully we'll get this work there. Maybe it'll be presented by you, Adriana, but hopefully it'll get presented. That's the most important thing. All right. Anything else? Last call. All right, excellent. Adriana, I do have a question that you can take home. I recall at one time that Climate at a Glance allowed you to do trends into the future. Is that my imagination or am I misremembering? I don't see anything on future conditions in Climate at a Glance, and I didn't think that was the case. Has that evolved?
Yeah,
Has that changed?
oh, thanks, Ellen. I was gonna say, I only recently learned about climate at a glance, probably in the
Oh,
last six
Ellen says
months.
yes. It was always
Um,
historical.
but it
Okay.
could have been a different tool, and if I stumble across it, I'll let you know.
All right. Sounds good. Yeah, because we were very interested in applications where we were seeing seasonal changes in rainfall and the implications for environmental contamination. So that's but that's been a little while since I used that tool. So maybe I was looking at something else. All right. Well then, thank you again. We'll see you in 2 months and we'll hear about the other great tools. What I want to do, Ellen, you got your hand up? Go ahead.
Sorry, Dan, just a quick point, and that is that Dan Barry, I think, was on this call, and there is some work on climate projections. So that I think would be an interesting point, is to consider the structure of the Climate at a Glance and add in the projections that people have been working on.
Yeah, no, that sounds good, Ellen. That was very nicely done. Obviously, Adriana, just so you know, I mean, like when engineers are interested, we're trying to design and build things that are going to last 30 to 50 years. So the current climate is relevant, certainly, but you know, we're trying to get to that endpoint out there, and that's why we often raise questions about projections.